Okay, you are live.
Great. Okay, council, we are back out in open session, and I'm looking for a mover and seconder for the resolution that was discussed in closed session. Can I have a mover, Councillor Alcott? And a
I will
seconder,
second.
Councillor Schumacher. Thank you very much. Be it resolved that council supports the steps identified by the Chief Administrative Officer as outlined in Confidential Report CAO 2020-12 to ensure business continuity of municipal operations during the COVID-19 pandemic with the following amendment. Report back to council regarding step 3 no later than April 6, 2020. Discussion. No questions? Councillor Withy, do you still want to record a vote?
No, it doesn't matter because we don't know the detail. We can't talk about the detail. We can't talk about the details, so that's fine.
Okay. If there are no questions, all in favor of the resolution? Opposed? That carries. The next item on the agenda are reports from municipal officers. Financial report by Julia McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is broken into two different sections. We've got the operating and the capital. And this is in response to the direction that was provided by Council at the March 26th meeting. We were tasked to look at what it looks like financially if we were to eliminate non-essential services and to report back on these expenses and to determine whether they would cover the offsetting lost revenues that we are expecting to experience. So just with regards to the operating, so I did put a little chart in there that does have a breakdown of the revenue loss, and this is anticipating that we don't have any programs to the end of the year. So this is projecting what we have now and anticipating that we won't have any further revenue to the end of the year. The expense reduction, this is based on several reductions to services. And this is part of the discussion that that Director Hernan would need to weigh in on, because it does include reductions to brushing, ditching, dust suppression, line painting, that sort of thing, and also some temporary closures and reduction of grass cutting. So those have been included in that expense reduction. However, a lot of the expense reduction is of the 1.177 does relate to other departments as well. Specifically facilities would see reduction in their expenses based on those programs not running. The salary, wages, and benefits, that specifically relates only to the reduction in hours due to the programs not running. So if we don't have summer camp, that type of thing is included in that amount. And then reserve changes, those are just to balance it off, those specifically relate to some of the items that are listed up above. So based on that, without any further recommendations that may be considered for staffing, we'd be looking at a deficit about of 174,000 overall for the year. We've also identified some other SWV changes that have been discussed that could actually turn that into a surplus. So we would be able to offset those expenses or the lost revenues by implementing that. If we do add back in some of the outdoor space maintenance, we still could be looking at still covering off our revenue shortage. So I don't know if we want to have a discussion now about those services and get some direction on those.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Julie, that's good news that we could end up in maybe an equal balance for costs that we don't incur for maintenance. So I think I'm very interested in having those numbers shared with us.
Okay.
for sure. So I think we need to have those available probably for our next meeting next week. Thank you.
There are other questions? So I'm going to ask one then with the attachment on here, particularly in Public Works, we have a number of road work projects and things attached here with the word cancel beside them. And I'm not sure that I'm comfortable asking Public Works to start canceling road contracts. Sorry, Julia, you go ahead.
Sorry, can we just go back to operating before we move on to capital?
Okay,
I just want to get some direction on some of those projects, such as the street sweeping, the brushing, ditching, and dust suppression, as well as the horticultural, because we need to know the direction on that before we can bring back the numbers.
okay, fair enough. Councillor Fitzgerald?
I think you'll find across the board, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but that I don't think those services are essential. So I would move that we absolutely agreed to remove those from our operating budget.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Your Worship. I disagree. I think sweeping the roads is not only a safety issue, a health and safety issue, it's also biohazardous waste on our roads. I believe that it needs to be cleaned up and put away. It's the safety of all our citizens. If you think of some of the rural roads that will have the heavy sand still on them, and kids on bicycles, or even people on motorcycles. And I think that's a service we need to maintain, and we need to keep those roads cleaned. As for dust suppression, I could probably forego the dust suppression for this year, but I think we need to have something in our back pocket in case this all resolves, and we need to do that.
Councillor Weed?
Thank you, Worship. I tend to agree with Councillor Armour. I think the horticulture I would cut, the sports fields I would cut. I would put a reduced park maintenance, because I do think on the health and safety aspect, as much as we want people to stay home, they're still going to go out to parks now and again. They're still going to walk dogs. They're still going to use some of the porta potties, etc. So we need to have at least some maintenance happening there. The locks I would cut. The sweeping, I wouldn't do the full contract, but I would do the reduced contract to try and get us close to where we want to be. And I would cut the dust suppression. So that's where I'm at with that. Thanks.
Councillor Alcock?
About that, I totally concur with Councillor Weeb on almost all of it. I on the street sweeping, I was about to agree with Councillor Armour. I'm not sure that maybe we should do the whole thing, but if the motion was just to reduce it by half, I'd support that too. So.
Councillor Schumacher?
I'm pretty much in agreement with Councillor Weed and Councillor Alcock in that, pretty much everything that was said. The only thing I would say is, I know we're trying to take ditching and stuff off the table, but I just want to make sure that we are healthy for flood season. So as long as I know that we're healthy for flood season when it comes to ditching, then I'm fine with everything else.
Councillor Thompson?
Here we go again. Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'm totally in favor of completing the sweeping program, whether it's rural and urban for sure, but rural as well, because as has been mentioned, I think it's a safety issue as well, because in some of the rural areas, I mean, we've dumped a lot of sand this year, which we do every year, and it becomes a safety issue, especially with people that are out on bicycles, and they come to a corner where there's a lot of sand. Well, then they're looking at a dangerous situation. That could be the same could be said for someone pushing a stroller, and so on and so forth. So I would suggest then, if if definitely the urban area, but then maybe we could be selective in some of those rural areas as well, if we're going to be cutting back on that particular program. If not doing the whole thing, then at least let's be selective and make sure that we're looking after those areas that are maybe deemed to be a little bit dangerous for cyclists and anyone else in that kind of a vehicle. And as far as the parks and that are concerned, I have a big problem with I guess if we're cutting back on doing the hanging baskets and so on and so forth, I guess I don't want to be the one telling the BIA that we're not going to have hanging baskets and stuff like that beautifying the downtown this year. So anyway, so I'm not in favor of that either. I'd be more in favor of keeping at least some of that particular program going, and earlier what I said with regards to sweeping. Thank you.
Councillor Withy. Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Your Worship. We don't have that list to see again, do we? Or is the list available?
Well, most of the items are listed right in your report there.
Well, I don't see it. Anyway, I would be, I think the sweeping is important for all the reasons Councillor Armour said. So that's what I would be in favor of. The rest can wait. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Sorry, Councillor Fitzgerald and Councillor Stone.
Oh, I don't know if my body language is saying anything, but we're talking about sweeping roads, and we are losing lives of fellow Canadians here. So where we are strapped with the responsibility of saving money, because that's what we feel we need to do. And we're losing lives, and we're talking about sweeping roads, and I don't understand where this conversation is going. So I think we've lost our way. So that's all I'm going to say.
Councillor Stone.
I don't disagree with most of what's been said. I would generally say cancel the contracts, do the work as best we can with the staff that we have, and do the important bits first, and let the rest fall where it may. As far as the flowers, I know we kind of contract those out and they have to be planted now. If we have to enlist citizens once things get rolling again to plant some flowers for baskets on Main Street, I'm sure they would come in droves. That's all I have.
Councillor Alcock.
I totally concur with actually what Councillor Stone just said. I've been approached by people already saying, how can I help? How can I volunteer? What do I need to be done? So to me, the idea of the planters, that's a perfect project at some point down the road, whenever we get there.
Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to read, for Councillor Fitzgerald, and we're saving lives here. I think the government goes down with the ship, and I think we need to try and keep our town as pleasing to people as we can, because if this at all should come on July 1st or August 1st or into September, and people start coming to their cottages and all that stuff, we still got to have a town for them to come and visit that is safe for the children and everybody in town. And I think cleaning the streets is important. It's a toxic waste we're leaving out there, covered with oil and gasoline and who knows what else, cigarette butts. So I think we need to clean that stuff up.
Councillor Alcock.
I neglected to say the last time, I do support cleaning the streets. I think the points are good points. It is a safety issue. And it can be as much a safety issue out in the rural areas as it is in the town. So I think that one I would support.
Okay, I think we've weighed in on this one. There's no actual recommendation. I think probably the director has gotten a pretty good idea. I know he has some specific questions that we will still get to an answer for. Do you want to do it now, Steve?
I need clarification on sweeping. The way I counted it, there was not clear direction there.
Yeah,
I
that's
had
that's
four
what
for
I
full
mean.
sweeping and I had 4. I think that we can get rid of the sweeping.
We're going to do a motion.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Councillor Schumacher.
If we negate the contract now, is there local people that we could enlist if things get better?
Director Hernan?
I don't know the answer to that one. The sweeping contractors are all filling their schedule. You book early, you get in the slot. I also don't know if there's a cancellation clause deep into the contract. We're gonna have to take a serious look at that one too, but there might be a small penalty.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you. So we're committed to a contract already for sweeping, Chief?
It was a 3-year tender we did last year. I've just got to go back and look at the exact wording on it. I know we can adjust it somewhat, but I don't know if this late in the game, whether we can do a full cancellation, but if council gives me direction, I'll work towards that.
And we only have 1 unit in the town equipment, or do we have?
That is correct.
Yeah. And if we have a complement of 1 unit and with the reassigned hours with no brushing and ditching, could we have someone who could accommodate all the sweeping?
We could continue to tackle it. If I take you back 2 or 3 years ago when we tried that, we were in September and October and still getting complaints from residents about it.
Even though we could dedicate someone full time without ditching and brushing being part of the equation?
Yeah, it'd be 1 machine. I think last year we were using 6 machines.
Okay, so it's way more involved than 1 machine. Okay,
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Wee?
Thank you, Worship. I would encourage Steve to Director Hernan to look at those contracts and see if there's no real way out, if we can do a reduced contract. That would be my first suggestion. But if there's a way of breaking it and you think that we can actually get the streets done in a reasonable time frame with our own 1 sweeper, I mean, it's not a lot of traffic. There's not a lot going on out there. I think, you know, if you think we can just muddle through it and get it done over the next few months, that might be a good cost saving measures as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Fitzgerald, is your hand up again? Councillor Fitzgerald?
That was a glasses adjustment. I apologize.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I see any other hands? Councillor Armour?
Are we going through the entire list for Public Works, capital, the spreadsheet?
No,
Okay. Or will we be?
I don't think so.
So we're just going to accept this as it is, this report and all these roads? that
No,
we're not
no,
gonna-
we haven't got to the capital piece yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you.
No. You're muted. We can't hear you. Councillor Thompson, we can't hear you. There.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Somebody keeps muting me out. Anyway, are we into discussing brushing and ditching at this point?
We are not.
Okay.
Let's go through these three that we have here first, and let's see where council sits on them. Can I have a mover and a seconder on, I'll read the resolution first and see if we can get a mover and seconder. Be it resolved that staff be directed to change the service level of sweeping to reduced operations. We have a mover, Councillor Weeb, seconder, Councillor Stone. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The next item is dust suppression. Sorry, did you have a question, Councillor Armour?
Yes, I think that motion, it doesn't say anything, address the contract that we have with the company. So if that company says they're not going to reduce when we have a 3-year contract, and there's no way getting out of that, how's that resolution going to fall from that?
Director Hernan?
I understand the gist of the motion, and I'll work with the contractor to get this done. If it can't be done, I'll report back to council.
Looking for a mover or seconder for dust suppression. It will read, be it resolved that staff be directed to change the service level of dust suppression to full service stop, which would entail no dust suppression. Councillor Weeb moving, Councillor Schumacher second. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Looking for a mover and seconder for a resolution on gardens. Be it resolved that staff be directed to change the service level of horticulture to full service stop, which would entail no maintenance of gardens, no flowers or baskets. Councillor Weeb, you're moving. Councillor Stone, you're second. All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. All right, back to you, Julia. Is there anything else in that operating piece that you felt we had to talk about specifically, or Director Hernan that you felt we had to talk about specifically?
I think those were the things that were most timely. So if there's other things that we'll have to bring that back after.
Okay. Is that all right with you, Steve?
Yep, we're having a discussion on capital now too, so we get direction on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Julia, back to you on the capital piece.
Okay, so so what's been provided here is a listing of all the capital projects that were included in the 2020 budget that were approved. So staff went through and looked at which ones could be deferred until next year based on whether contracts have already been awarded or not, and whether it's essential to get done this year, whether it could be deferred. There are some projects that it might be good to get these done because we have less traffic in these places, so we might be able to get them done. We also have to look at the contracts and whether we safely proceed with getting all these projects done. But at this point, we just provided this for information for you.
Okay, so this list is, sorry, all right, go ahead. Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Worship. Just a clarification, if I may. I'm not understanding the black type and then the red type. What do those mean? Because then there's black and then black cancel and then red. Can you tell me what the red and black are differentiating, please?
I don't have any red in my report, so maybe Steve or Julia, you can explain the red, or? Steve?
Yeah, so I just pulled it up and took a look at it. I guess you have to go to the top of the columns there, Councillor Withy. We had one that was originally budgeted, then that was tendering. It's how we're working through it. And then we've got what we call the COVID-19. So some things were just red just based on how the funding was following, but pay attention to the column on the right. So there's some projects that still have dollar figures in, which means they're still proceeding because we're too far into them or we've already committed and can't get out of them. And anything with a cancel beside it means it's a project that we'd be shutting down. When we thought we were stopping all but essential work, that was the list that we put together.
Councillor Armour?
Is this our opportunity to speak about some of those projects they've listed there that they're canceling?
Yes.
Well, there's a couple that jump out to me, but one of them is that the Echo Bay that we just spent thousands of dollars on last year, and we postponed it for 2 years. We've already owed 11,500 on it, and it's been canceled to be done this year. But yet we're still looking at putting, if I read this right, we're still putting $1 million in the Main Street reconstruction revitalization. So I think we should be diverting some of that money into getting some of these streets done. And if in 2021 Main Street's a go, we may have to debenture some of that money at that time. But I think road maintenance is important right now for our economy and to keep people working. Again, more people on layoff.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would agree with Councillor Armour on that particular point. The other thing I would bring up too, I'm looking at brushing and further down ditching. I see that in the brushing column, for instance, that there are, I think, 11 items that were identified for brushing this year, 11 areas, I should say. But the bottom 6 are based on funding, and the top 5 were not based on funding, but they were in the budget. I would suggest that we go ahead with those that are in the budget, those 5 that are in the budget for brushing, and delay the 6 that are based on funding in terms of brushing. Also, in terms of ditching, we have Bayshore Boulevard, Harp Lake Road, West Point Sands, then Stevenson Road 4, Williamsport Road, and then Rowanwood Road. Those were in the budget. The other ones that are based on funding, okay, cancel those, but the ones that we actually had budgeted for, I think we should go ahead with.
Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Your Worship. I understood that these were things that we already sort of decided that we weren't doing anyway, because we're pulling back and laying people off, and the things that we're doing to deal with this issue we're in. We can't just start throwing this stuff back in when we don't. We're trying to save money and maybe don't even have the personnel. So wasn't my understanding that we talked about sweeping and then that's about it. I don't know. Am I wrong there?
I think, for starters, I don't think we asked for a list of capital projects and what we could cancel out. I know it got thrown into the essential versus non-essential services. but I didn't think we were at the stage where we wanted to sit down and start running through our capital list as to what we could cancel. Number one, we need to know if these projects are projects we do in-house with our staff, because then that impacts on whether we're having staff working or not, or if it's all contract work. And I think we also need a full report from Director Hernan on whether this is the type of year that we're going to get better pricing on these works, and that we're going to stimulate the economy when we do get going. So I'd really like to see a full report come back from the director on if there's anything on this list that makes sense for us to cancel. And right now, I don't think that we should be making that decision. Councillor Weave.
Thank you, Worship. I agree wholeheartedly with that statement. And I would, again, I know I've been beating the drum, but I would beat it one more time and saying that we have to make sure that none of these projects, if we're even contemplating them, would be putting the health and safety of any of the workers at risk. Because crews, any construction crew of any kind, it requires manpower, and it requires people riding in trucks. And so that's got to be really carefully executed, and I can't state it enough, but I just want to keep that as a top of mind as my priority. Thanks.
Director Hernan.
I just want to touch on the safety, just to maybe clear the air on that one. We did have a Ministry of Labor inspector attend the work site last week because of a concern that was raised. After a full investigation, the inspector found that the municipality was doing everything right. There was no recommendations. There was no follow-up required. He closed the file. I can tell you we've had great communications with our union. I can tell you our union has no concerns with it. And we're taking steps and procedures in place to protect the employees. So at no time has an employee ever been put in a dangerous situation, or is it in our intent to ever do that? So just to clarify, I know and I appreciate concern for safety, and we're all there, but I just want to put that issue to bed if I could. Like I say, we did have a concern raised to the Ministry of Labor last week, which resulted in an inspection, and they were quite pleased with what the municipality had taken, the steps that they had taken. And I'll also add just on that one, it was not a union initiated complaint. The union, we've been in constant communication with the business office, and they're quite pleased with the steps we're taking now to protect the employees.
Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Director Hernan, for your comments just now. But I just wanted to endorse what you said, Your Worship, with respect to the report coming back on the full list of capital items. So I'm glad you said that. Thanks.
Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Director Hernan. Do you know if the district's still going through with the King William project coming up?
Steve?
Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, King William is still moving forward. We're working with the contractor now. They're preparing to get back on site as soon as they can. So that project will be going hopefully in the next week or two. And construction projects like that were exempt from the provincial list on infrastructure.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
I know there's been a lot of discussion about the King William project and how we proceed with that, because we don't know how long our store owners can survive with no business. So I think that's maybe something we have to revisit. And I know there's contracts in place and there's timelines involved, but we have to look at what's best for the community here.
Councillor Armour.
I think it's a great opportunity to be doing it because nobody's out and about now. So maybe they can speed the construction up and have it done maybe a couple weeks quicker than normal time. So
I think Director Hernan, I don't believe we have any ability to cancel the King William Streets project this year, right?
That is a district project, and I believe you're correct. I mean, the contract's led, it's in the middle of the process. But that is a district project, not a town run one.
Councillor Thompson, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. I have a resolution about capital that if I can get a mover and seconder, I will read it. Be it resolved that staff be directed to further investigate and report back what capital projects should proceed in 2020 and which should be deferred to 2021, which I think really, for your sake, Steve, it means proceed as normal with all 2020 capital unless you're going to come back with something that should be deferred. I don't think you need to go through every project. Councillor Armour, would you move that?
I'll move that.
Seconder, Councillor Fitzgerald. Julie, do you have a question?
I just have a point of clarification, because there's other capital projects other than operations as well. So are you asking the other managers to come, or other directors to come back with that report as well?
Yeah, it says staff, so that can include everyone. All in favor? That's carried. We're at new business. Director O'Brien, you have an update on community support.
Hello, yes. I did reach out to several organizations in the community to get a sense of the current status of some of the pressures that they were feeling. I did speak to the Salvation Army, and I did speak to Darren Wiseman, and they are experiencing an increase, probably twofold to threefold the number of people that are coming to ask specifically for food. Quite a bit of increase there. They are doing this without volunteers right now due to the COVID restrictions. So they're doing it with their current staff. They only have one volunteer that they're allowing who works full time in there on a daily basis. They're missing their congregation right now. So there is quite a bit of demand in the community for food at this point, which is not surprising because I think the Salvation Army is very well known for being a provider of food. We did offer to link their services onto our COVID-19 website page, and they seem very interested in that. So I'll be moving forward to get their communications person in touch with our communications person to assist them in that way. They are experiencing shortages of food. They do have several sources that they go to, but even those sources are very stressed. They are giving out less food than they normally do give out also to our community. So people are receiving not as much food as they would have in normal circumstances. So there's quite a bit of pressure on the Salvation Army there. The thrift store is also closed right now, just for people's information, it is closed. I also reached out to Faith Baptist Church, and a different experience there. They've only really had about 4 calls from there. They have a lot of volunteers, about 35 volunteers that are ready and willing to assist the community if needed. But currently they're not experiencing an increase in calls. They are recognizing that there are a group of people in the community that are looking after each other as neighbors, and they're really encouraging that, and they're really glad that our community is stepping up in that way. But as COVID-19 continues, the sustainability of people to be able to help their neighbor out ongoingly may decrease, and they're willing to step in at that point, and we'll keep in contact with them to see how those services go. I also did make a call to the district, and I haven't heard back from them through Samantha Hastings today. And I also did make a call to Table Food Bank, but again, they just didn't get back to me in time for this meeting. So we're just going to keep a close eye. I'm also asking them if they would find it helpful for us to facilitate a Zoom conference call with not-for-profits and people who deal in social services. And most people are suggesting that they would find that really helpful at this point. The other thing to mention is that the provincial government, as I'm sure you are all aware, has stepped up investment to help the community and community organizations coordinate delivery of things like medicine and other necessities to seniors. There's been an increased investment of $10 million that was just announced today. And the government is also working with grocers and pharmacists to prioritize delivery to seniors. So that's really great to see. Seniors who are in retirement homes, there is a $20 million investment over 2 years to increase such things as infection control, active screening. There's also $243 million for long-term care screening, offering cleaning and sanitation, and increased demand for services they expect to have happen. And that's it. Any questions?
I'll go to Council Weeb first. He was the one to ask for this to be on our agenda. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. I think it highlights for me what I suspected all along in some of the conversations that I've had with some of the people in town, and that is there's a rapidly growing need for the basics. Basic necessities, food, supplies are becoming more and more in short supply. And I think that I'm hoping that we position ourselves to be able to reach out and assist these charities, because if these meetings and all these exercises are all for naught if we can't defend and assist the most vulnerable in this society, in our society. So I would move or at least direct staff to come report back with some sort of funding model that we could put into place for the foreseeable future anyway, until some of this government money starts to flow, because I think that this is at the heart of it. This is where we need to help. So I'd like to put that out for discussion and just see what you guys think.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm quite happy that the town walkers did a great job and raised $45,000 for one of the food banks in town, and that the firefighters and the Lions and various community groups raised a lot of awareness and collected so much more food than we ever collected on our Christmas food drive. So I think we need to reach out to the community and suggest that they actually dig deep and commit to the food banks, the Salvation Army, and the harvest.
Oops, we lost them. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. I appreciate Councillor Weeb's comments, as well as Councillor Fitzgerald. And one thing I just wanted to add to Laurie's report is the district CAPS, Community and Planning Services. We're hosting a meeting this week, in like a Zoom meeting, and one of the items will be an update on how they've adjusted some of their workload to go towards the vulnerable communities and the work that we do at the district for those communities. So I certainly can bring back an update because I was curious to see how things have adjusted, how programs have adjusted down there. So
I think that would be great. One of the questions I wanted to ask Director O'Brien, or you are still here, when you talk to the Salvation Army, and you said that they only had one volunteer working, was it because they didn't want any more people there, or because they couldn't get anyone? I'm just thinking if Faith Baptist has volunteers, could we pair them up, or?
Yeah, I think Faith Baptist has volunteers who are in the wings ready to be called as needed. My understanding from the Salvation Army, it's due to COVID-19 that they just can't handle the number of people there working together.
Oh, okay. Okay. Are there any other questions? All right. I have a sort of a draft that I would say would be moved by Councillor Wiebe. Be it resolved that council direct staff to investigate what the immediate needs are for those organizations who are providing support to those in need with food and essential supplies in regards to COVID-19 pandemic and report back. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Schumacher? And I'm sure we can get that information by our meeting next week if there's something that it's critical that we get that information if there's help we need to provide by then. All in favor of the resolution? And that's carried. Okay. All right. If I can get a mover and a seconder for the confirmation bylaw, Councillor Alcock and Councillor Stone, be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2020-41 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 30th day of March 2020. All in favor? That's carried. And can I get a mover and a seconder for adjournment? Councillor Alcock and Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 9:22 p.m. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Wash your hands.
Thanks, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
See you next week.